everybody, this is Hercules Pedix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the Hercules Pedix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to continue our look at now the great 80s anthology underground Snarf. We're up to number 11, and we're up to like 1989 in the timeline. This came out 2 years after number 10, so at least they're closing the gap in between issues. Once again, another fine cover, this time by Rand Holmes. Just some really beautiful stuff. Always liked Rand Holmes stuff, very much in the tradition of Wally Wood, and just very illustrative, and he just puts the work in. He's not dashing this shit off. He's like a real cartoonist. And as we can see from this cover, it's we see this millionaire type guy, and instead of like his butler bringing him the finest Cuban cigars or the finest cognacs, he's bringing him bicycle seats that young girls have ridden so he can sniff them like a connoisseur. It's pretty foul. But the reason why, there's an explanation for this cover, I meant to say, in this note from Dennis Kitchen. Dennis Kitchen recounts how in 1971, when he started Snarf, he just thought Snarf was a short, snappy title. A nonsense word. But then he found out quickly from a bunch of his cartoonist friends, like Jay Lynch, who said, "Do you know what Snarf means?" It means to sniff a leather bicycle seat after a girl sits on it. And I've seen that action drawn in comics and comic strips as basically a sign of like a total perv. It's like something doofus would do. Just to show that the character is very degenerate, Bobby London told him the same thing. So Dennis Kitchen realized, I guess this is a real word. People have been using it for years to mean that. Rand Holmes was one of these people who informed him about it. So he asked Rand Holmes to draw the cover, showing the act of snarfing. He also claims that he asked him to draw a comic equally as perverse as the cover. This story that we're about to see, Basement Man in Latex Love by Rand Holmes, is way more perverse than the cover. It's pretty perverse. Also, strangely enough, it says copyright 1980. So I don't know if Dennis Kitchen got his facts confused or if he's just lying to us. But it seems like this story was made 9 years before any of this happened. But then again, maybe this story took place back in 1980, and it just took Dennis Kitchen 9 years to get it in Snarf. I don't know, but it is confusing. So as we can see, look at Rand Holmes, this is like totally beautiful Wally Wood type art, something out of a great EC comic. So Basement Man gets a package. Apparently he ordered one of those inflatable rubber sex dolls, which I don't even know if they make those anymore. And he's very happy with it. But he realizes that it doesn't look anything like it did in the ad. The ad always makes him look way better. So he puts a wig on her to make her look better. And then he says, the boobs aren't big enough. I'm going to inflate her. But then it makes her look like the Goodyear blimp. Everything inflates. So he says, I've got to figure out a way to constrict the rest of her body and just have the boobs expand. And then he realizes it's laundry day. Apparently there's an overweight woman, an older lady who lives above in the apartments. She's always drying her corsets on the line. So he grabs a corset, grabs a motorcycle helmet from the tough biker guy who lives next door, and also the thigh-high leather boots that were left out on the porch by another neighbor. So he puts them all on, and then his little plan works. The rest of the body can't really blow up, so the boobs get huge, and the rest doesn't. He puts the helmet over her head, and the wig on top of the helmet. And now we see the neighbors, and they realize that I'm kind of covering my hand here, guys. This is where it gets pretty crazy. They realize that the fat woman realizes her corset's missing. The young woman realizes her boots are gone. And then all while they're talking about that, we see in the basement, Basement Man is trying out his new sex doll. He's having a great time until a nail in the leather boot pierces the latex rubber of the doll. And it takes flight. It just goes whoosh because of the pressure. And he's holding on for dear life, riding it like a flying bronco. And the doll actually smashes through the little basement window out into the street, knocking these two women on their asses. He's still flying around. This is like a total Warner Brothers cartoon. And also, look at this. Speaking of EC Comics or early Mad, this is like pure wood, pure elder. This is fun stuff. And so basically, the inflatable doll gives up steam, and he crashes kind of right at the feet of these ladies. Of course, they quickly recognize their stuff. They're like, hey, that's my corset. And those are my boots. The biker looks out of his window because he hears the commotion, says, that's my helmet. And they all start chasing him. Once again, look at that Bill Elder, running bodies, That's so Bill Elder. And the biker's chasing him. He jumps into our hero here leaps into a dumpster, and I guess he's saved. His pursuers all pass him by. We see later, Basement Man, I'm sorry, I should say this first. Basement Man's like, shit, what am I going to do for clothes? I'm buck naked. And then a few hours later, we see this police officer calling in a bunch of winos causing trouble. And we see Basement Man wearing a box and an oil can, because that's all he has for clothing. And that's the end. Just a zany, perverse, madcap romp. Pretty fun stuff. I love the art in this. It's so nice seeing Rand Holmes, letting himself be a little cartoony. But for the most part, he's not very cartoony. He's just very illustrative. And man, I just can't believe how he's summoning Bill Elder in this. It's really great. Next, we have Mark Landman. He was one of the first guys to use computers in comic work back in the mid-'80s. Never been a fan of his stuff. I think with the limitations of a computer, especially back in 1980, whatever, he did pretty good stuff. I mean, this looks kind of fun. It's not like that Shatter comic by Mike Syans, which was just, I didn't even want to look at that art. It was so gross. But he's not that funny to me. This is a story called Mr. Ned, the Talking Gila Monster, or Gila Monster. And it's just about this crazy guy who thinks that his Gila Monster could talk, almost like that frog in the cartoons, but he never talks when anyone's watching. And he ends up getting thrown in jail for, I don't know, possibly defiling a Gila monster. It's kind of goofy, not that great. This one's really interesting. This next strip is Fundamentalism by Dennis Worden. We see this like hardcore atheist guy. He's going on and on about how science shows us truth. Science is based on hard facts, while religion is all myth. And it turns out he's in bed with his wife. She's like, give it a rest, Bob. He's like, yeah, sorry, I got carried away. So this guy just rants about this shit all the time. He falls asleep, and he wakes up. Someone's tapping him with a cane. It's Charles Darwin. And Charles Darwin kind of fucks with him a little mentally. And then he basically starts telling him, he's like, I came here just to tell you something about my theory of evolution. It was just a theory. And with all the science that archaeologists have discovered since his theory, which he, as a ghost, he knows about, he's like, hey, there's huge gaps in my theory, and yada, yada, yada. And basically, it takes a huge leap of faith just to believe in evolution. You're being just as silly as those fundamentalists. Now, this comic's really interesting to me because I totally disagree with this. I'm an atheist. But it's really interesting that Dennis Worden sets up this argument from the other side, the side that doesn't believe in evolution. And he doesn't have an alternate theory, but he does say that, yeah, it's a pretty unlikely theory, his own theory. I don't quite buy it, though, what he's saying. Talking about how how people have selectively bred plants and animals for centuries, and there's only so far you can go. We've never been able to turn a species into another species. Like, you can breed a dog till the cows come home, forever. Not to mix up a sloppy metaphor, but they're never going to be another species. It's like, we created an elephant dog. But who knows? In a million years, maybe you would. I'm sorry, billions of years. That's how evolution works, very slowly. So I don't know if you can use evidence like that. Sorry, this is just my personal beliefs, have no place here. This is a comic review podcast. But very interesting comic. It's fun to think about these things. And I do like the funny ending where he finally, realizes he had a dream, goes back to sleep, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Psst, hey, Bob." And it's Jesus Christ, Satan, Santa Claus, and a Martian. And they're like, "Got a minute? We want to screw with your head too." This one's called Roadkill, and it's by this guy, Steve Torman. Let me look closer, guys. Hold on. Oh, sorry, just Tuman. Steve Tuman. Kind of like this guy's style. Very interesting. We see this biker. Almost looks like a caricature of a young Ronald Reagan. And just this guy's having a bad night all around. And then we realize he's just a character in this TV movie or whatever, and this fat guy's watching it. Not much of his plot, but kind of interesting. Next, we have R.L. Crabbe with California. I'm not a big fan of R.L. Crabbe, never have been. This one's not so bad. I kind of find it interesting, and his art looks pretty okay for the most part. So it's basically R.L. Crabbe as a Californian telling us how bad California is. The smog, the solar radiation from the huge holes in the ozone, hordes of bloodthirsty murderers stalk the streets at night, drug addicts and cults are everywhere, homosexuals run the schools, your children will certainly get an education. We see this fat guy in a bra and panties, and he just has written on the blackboard, cunnilingus fellatio. It's very interesting that reading this now, this sounds like, what certain political parties are like trying to scare the rest of us with, this is America. If you let a gay teacher in to the school system, they're going to be doing shit like this. And, let's send the National Guard in because this liberal city's full of crime. When really the crime has gone down, according to all statistics. So kind of interesting that this has come to pass in a way. I love this panel. He's talking about the earthquakes killing hundreds of people every day, and all the buildings are all wobbly. This is just a really interesting panel. A weird perspective. So basically they're saying that it's all the scam of real estate developers. They've been lying to the world for years, making California seem like this great paradise, especially using Hollywood know-how to make these fake films. And then we see the strip kind of taper off. Right in the middle of a sentence, we see R.L. Crabbe, his pen line just goes, And there's a message from the California Chamber of Commerce saying, unfortunately, this artist died before he could complete the strip. This next one is kind of fun. The Teeny Tiny Comics Company presents Otis Remembers Curtis. And this is by a guy named Burke Sauls. Never heard of this guy before. Kind of fun. I love these. It's like an early Joe Matt comic. And it's just about a guy. For some reason, he's got this big hood on, like almost like a KKK looking hood. And he's just remembering this weird guy he once knew, telling the whole story of their relationship. Actually, this reminds me more of one of those National Lampoon cartoonists who would just use the tiny little panels. I can't think of his name right now. But there's a lot of stuff like this in National Lampoon. Here's another Mark Landman. The Town Where Time Went Bad. And basically it's like, this is almost like a crappier version of a J.G. Ballard story. One day time abruptly began to work in reverse. People awoke at night and fell asleep in the morning. Hair grew backwards into the scalp. And diners discovered that as soon as they sat down at the table, food leapt from their mouths to their plates. Pretty soon people got used to it, and they were kind of happy. Until the day gravity went bad too. This you can really see the computer effects. He's really laying into them. Kind of cute story, kind of funny. Next, we have P.S. Mueller doing a whole story, not just a one-panel gag. He spent most of his career doing that. This guy comes home from work. He's been infected at the laboratory where he works. He's got this infection. His head looks like it's just fit to burst. His wife is acting very nonchalant about it. Just like, well, if you think your head's going to explode tonight, you better get a drop cloth. I don't want to have to clean the carpets again. Some really crazy cartoony in this. So I guess it's getting really bad. He knows he's about to blow, so he goes out to the garage so he doesn't make a mess. And you hear plap. And when he comes back, he says, good news, the disease isn't fatal, but I'm going to need a rubber hat because it looks like he's almost like a burzit. His whole skull is caved in. Speaking of Joe Matt, these are some of Joe Matt's first comic strips. If you aren't familiar with Joe Matt's early stuff, he had all these comics like this, lots of little panels, just talking about himself, way more, in a cutesy way. They're kind of funny, they're kind of cute. These are really fun comics. I remember reading these and being like, who the hell is this guy? It's like, all he does is write about himself. Of course, he'd spent his whole career doing that, and unfortunately, he died too young. But this is the very first one. It's like, hey, things you should know about Joe Matt. And it's just a lot of little factoids about him. He's a book hoarder. He's cheap. And then we have a bunch of strips about his recent life and his girlfriend, Trish, who, if you guys ever read Peep Show number 1 and 2, maybe 3, she's still his girlfriend at that point. Since Joe Matt just chronicles his own life, we kind of see in real time Joe meeting Trish, falling in love, and later on in Peep Show comics, we'll see their breakup. I just liked how dense these were, packed with information, packed with, jokes, and the cartooning is kind of very simple but kind of cute, It's a nice little style he's developed. Here's one just specifically talking about love. And this one's talking about anti-love before he met Trish, how he was not having the best time with the ladies. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the one before. I meant to say, this is the one where he first talks about his addiction to pornography. And even though at the end it seems like he comes clean to Trish, and they kind of, she's fine with it, she realizes, and they eventually watch porn together. And it seems like it's a happy ending, but if you've read Peep Show, you know that Joe Matt never, in fact, his addiction to pornography only increased over the years. This is really interesting. My Auntie Moo watches the TV news. This is Howard Cruz. I mean, you can kind of tell by the pen lines, the pen work, but man, I've never seen him really draw like this. Kind of interesting. Just this old lady hearing all this horrible news throughout the world, kind of commiserating, being like, oh, those poor people. But even when they talk about how the last panel says, in America, dental hygienists found that the Ku Klux Klan have a lower incidence of dental plaque than the various groups they seek to eliminate. And Auntie Moo says, that's nice. Kind of weird. But really like this art. Once again, look at this great logo. Howard Cruz is so skillful at that kind of stuff. We have 3 more single panel gags from P.S. Mueller. Kind of fun, cute. I always like, P.S. Mueller's pretty good. And then we have this little half-page strip by that Burke Sauls guy. First date with John Wayne Gacy. Not that funny. And I love this back cover. This is Rand Holmes again. Did the front and back covers. And this is him totally drawing like funny, not funny animals, funny vegetables. And this is just a goofy gag. We see this carrot get run over. His carrot juice is spilling out into the tarmac. It looks like he's going to die. His friend rushes to the hospital after the surgery. The doctor says, well, he'll live. Unfortunately, he'll be a vegetable for the rest of his life. That's the dumb joke. That's a pretty dumb joke. But it's so beautifully drawn and it's so earnestly delivered. I kind of chuckled when I read this. It was like, oh my God, that's so bad. It's kind of funny. So there you go, guys. Snarf number 11. Continuing our look at this great comic. I'm really excited to see the next 4 issues as we go into the 90s. It seems I'm very interested to see what artists will pop up in this comic, because I forgot. I haven't read these in a while. So thanks for watching, guys, and I hope to see you next time here at the Hercules Pedics Academy of Comic Book Studies.